Major funding for these programs has been provided by grants from Chase Commercial Term Lending and M&T Bank, Geneva Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Capital One Bank, the Wickoff Group, New York Community Bank, Greenberg Traurig, Perfect Building Maintenance, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by grants from Aerial Property Advisors, AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Colliers International NYC, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, CUNY TV Foundation, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, First Nationwide Title Insurance Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, Herrick Feinstein, Hersha Hospitality Trust, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman, USRealty.com, John Katsimides, Red Apple Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, New Banks, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, People's United Bank, RBS Citizens Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling and Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, The Continuum Company, Urban American, and these friends.
It's the state of New Jersey, and there's a lot of things taking place. There's a lot of residential development in certain parts. There's student housing being done. There are age-restricted housing. There is office buildings. So there's a lot of things taking place in New Jersey. So today I've assembled a group of business leaders to provide their insight on what's happening in the Garden State. My guests today include Matt Galligan, who is the president of CIT Real Estate Finance, Chris Palladino, who is the president of New Brunswick Development Corporation, a.k.a. DevCo, Frank Sorrentino, who is the chairman and CEO of ConnectOne Bank, and last but not least, Ken Pasternak, who is the co-founder and managing member of the KABR Group. So you're into residential and commercial development around the country, but you have a major presence in the state of New Jersey. You are a community banker in the state of New Jersey. You're a company who does business all over the country, but you really have gone into New York City and you've made an entrance into certain parts of New Jersey. And you are the 800-pound gorilla of New Brunswick because you've taken and really changed the face of New Brunswick, and now you're going to Newark. So what, in your opinion, what has happened over the last 18 months in the state of New Jersey that there's been more development? What's the reason? Is it the urban green? Is it the go credits? What's caused this improvement?
Well, with respect to New Brunswick, what we're finding is people are waking up that New Brunswick's a great alternative for a real 24-hour, 7-day-a-week urban lifestyle. And it starts and maybe ends with transportation. You can be in New York City in 35, 40 minutes. But there's a whole vitality that has been a 20-year process. It really hasn't been the last 18 months. The fact that there's a lot of pent-up demand for places for people to live, and you have a realignment and restructuring of one of the largest research universities in the country that finally has put in the right direction.
But you brought up prior to the show, which is an interesting situation. There are people, who are in their 50s or in their early 60s who may have had a home in parts of New Jersey. It doesn't matter. Their children may be in New Jersey or they may be in New York. They want to downsize, and New Brunswick has that great opportunity where they could, buy a condominium or rent an apartment to do that over there. But that's New Brunswick. Now you're making that trip into Newark, which Frank says to me has a great transportation like New Brunswick. But a lot of people, including Ken, who has a property over there, and probably one of the nicest rental apartment buildings, who's saying, I really don't want to be in Newark.
We're making a pretty safe bet because it's a captive market. We're taking a historic building, we're doing a total gut renovation, and 365 students, mostly law students, who have to commute into the city today because they haven't found a lot of opportunities to live there. And we have the backing of the university because, you know, from a credit standpoint, the university is really taking the risk that that the students will respond to that opportunity. So it's a calculated
look,
risk.
It is a captive situation because the law school's over there, and you know it's convenient. And as I think the biggest question about certain places, and I'm not sure who brought it up before, 20 years ago, New York City was not a safe thing, but with the Giuliani and the Bloomberg administration, the world changed. You know, you've seen that, you know, in your lending position in New York City.
Sure. I came here in 1976 and worked for Chase Manhattan Bank, and it was not pretty. You know, the city was essentially in bankruptcy. And Ken and I were talking earlier about Union Square. You didn't want to go into Union Square for safety or cleanliness reasons. And now look at it. So there's been obviously a demonstrative change in Manhattan, and it's almost to the point where there is not a neighborhood that you wouldn't go into. But
how have you made this decision to lend money into Edgewater and into Jersey City?
You can't afford to live here. You know, we were talking on the way in, Mike. A year ago, condominium land was $400 a foot in New York. Today, it's closer to $800 a foot. To put the 400 in perspective, Williamsburg is $350 a foot, and you know it's not. You've got to take a boat to get there. Now, to go into Jersey City, we see land at around $100 a foot. We see the area, the harbor or the Hudson water area, having 10,000 units developed between now and 2017. And the projections are that if that happens, the vacancy rate only goes to 5% from 4%. So half the price in New York is a lot.
Yeah, Mike, I think it's all proximity to New York City. You know, New Jersey's gone through an interesting time, right? The last almost a decade, there's been less construction through this recession. People have had a more difficult time to be able to afford that home that you just described before. And so there's been a shortage of housing stock being built in New Jersey. At the same time, New York City, which is very proximate, right? It's just over the bridge or through the tunnel, or via mass transit, even more importantly, has been on fire. And that is driving the values
But you
here.
brought up an interesting point prior to the show. You know, for 45 years, the Hemsley site that we would call, which is right at the George Washington Bridge, not far from the development that you did in Edgewater, you know, a prime location, great views of the city, sat dormant. Many people try to develop it, and now there's going to be development. But you brought up the comment that there's no transportation.
You cannot get from that site to New York City.
So you have you have close to 900 units that SJP is developing. You have Tucker doing development over there. I mean, how do you see the Fort Lee?
So I think it's I don't want to say a travesty, but I think it's a shame that markets that are so close to New York City don't have the infrastructure that's required or needed to support that market. And yet, right across the river, other parts of New Jersey, Hoboken, Jersey City, New Brunswick, places that have mass transit are doing phenomenal.
So here's the question. Why don't, which Jersey City did, why don't you do light rail? Why don't you have a light rail or some type of rail to get you to the ferry or to get you to a means of mass transportation?
We're starting to hear about it. Just heard Mayor Frank Huddle in Englewood getting together with Mayor Steve Fulop to say, hey, we're going to bring light rail up through Englewood and into Tenafly. I think these are very important issues. I think they actually will portend what will happen in northern New Jersey. specifically northeastern Bergen County, where there isn't rail service. There's better rail wood than there is from Fort Lee.
And that's one of the reasons that many people have always liked Westfield, because of the transportation over there. You being both sides of the coin, you took over buildings, I mean, which you would have never financed, because he took over vacant, for a different matter. He took over vacant buildings, and through tenacity and his hard work, they were able to get tenants to go over there. But New Jersey, when I would do a show on the office market or the state of New Jersey with owners and developers a couple years ago, I still remember Manny Stern saying to me, let's not talk about the office business because there's no office business in New Jersey. And that was the basic comment. Nobody was moving to New Jersey for office space. The office space was being consolidated. At one time, everybody went to Roseland. Everybody was in 2 blocks in Roseland.
And you couldn't buy a tuna fish sandwich.
Right. So what do you see? And you've been a visionary.
Well,
You've done a lot
well,
in
I
the
think
last 5 or 6 years.
we try to look for opportunities. You know, sometimes a bad situation at the right price can be a good situation. We paid about 20 cents in the dollar for our real estate holdings, $40, $50 a square foot for $200 real estate. So we can steal tenancy. I think the pundits will tell you that real estate in the office market in nominal value has basically stayed flat for probably since 1990. So that, you know,
It's like Westchester.
Yeah.
The rents are the same as they've been for
right.
25
So
years.
on one hand, it's a horrible market. On the other hand, if you have the right basis and you have well-located assets. So we try to have assets that have some kind of connectivity to New York City. And for instance, we're putting a shuttle bus to 15X in our Overpeck Park asset, which is about 7 minutes away. So we can make it around a 20-minute jog into Penn Station, New York City from our office park. So we think that's a dynamic that creates that kind of commutation. There's a reverse now where a lot of our tenants want to hire into that, we call it new urbanism, youth market that really wants to have a lifestyle. They don't really care where they work so much, but they care where they live and how they get to where they work. And there's a reverse commute, quite a bit of maybe counterintuitively. We think in some cases as much as a third of the employees live in New York and work in New Jersey, as opposed to the other way around. And one of the demands, some of these tenants are technology companies like Samsung that want a lot of these innovators that are kind of sub 35 and have the technology skills and mobile applications.
But
and so
don't
on.
you need to have, I did a show with some major residential people. The young people want to have amenities, they want to have opportunities, they want restaurants, they want some vibrancy, and they want also convenience to New York City. Everybody wants to be here. Not everyone, as Matt said before, not everyone can afford to live here. So, if you have that, but you have to, it's like building the planned development. So the development is not only residential, it's like the mixed use. So where you have, which they've done in certain parts of Long Island, they've done in certain parts of New Jersey, where you might have some ground floor retail, maybe some second floor office, for certain businesses, and then residential on top. So they're 4 to 6 story. I mean, that's what you've been involved with.
Mike, isn't that what happened in Hoboken? I mean, Hoboken is an incredible market in that it's a very young, vibrant market. There's a big portion of it that, yes, commutes to the city, and that's where the value is. But there's another pretty good-sized market that, just like Ken just mentioned, commutes elsewhere in New Jersey, but they want that city living type of lifestyle, and they want that capability to go to New York City on the weekend if they want.
And that's what we're finding in both of your points. We just finished a building with 600,000 square feet. It was apartments, it was condominiums, it was 80,000 square feet of office, it was 60,000 square feet of retail, it was
Is that the
parking.
one where you had the fresh grocer?
No, it's across the other side of the track. It connected directly to the train tracks. We leased 160 units in 4 months, sold 50 condominiums in a year, leased up the 80,000 square feet, and we find 40% of our residents commuting to New York, but there's a good chance that there's a part of that couple, somebody else living in that apartment, that's walking to work, or access to the turnpike and other transportation makes sense. It's really, it's a phenomenon, and it's because they can come home and they can kind of go out and have a drink and walk back to their apartment and have that new urbanism lifestyle.
So, in the state of New Jersey, because we're basically talking within an hour commute or within 45 minutes commute, what's the best opportunities, both as a banker, as a community banker, to make loans for residential development or commercial development? You know, because New Jersey's got a bad rap, let's say, over the last couple of years. But it's a nice place to live. You know, so
I think there's a couple of New Jerseys, actually. And the New Jersey that we focused our business in and our recent merger puts us squarely in the market that surrounds New York City. If you were to take Manhattan and make it the whole of the donut and look at the donut that surrounds it, the part that's New Jersey is where our bank is represented.
So
but that's a very different place than other parts of the state.
So here's the question that and Matt has heard me, and I've written numerous articles about this. The comment is the streets of New York are paved with gold in a different manner, that many banks from around the country are trying to enter the market, like the Bank of the Ozarks, Fifth and Third. My friends from Investors coming over here, the other Provident from Montebello over here. When is the ConnectOne coming over here? I mean, but people want the opportunities over here. But you haven't taken the opportunities to be in New York City.
Well, we think the big opportunity right now is in Jersey City. We've bought about 3 million square feet of potentially about 3,500 apartments. So the dynamic there is this, again, new urbanism, critical mass, which is going to go from about 12,000 units to about 20 or 25,000 units. And we think that produces, and frankly, good urban planning for all that retail. If you look at what's going on in the waterfront now, they're building
But part of this definitely
live work.
I mean, you have a dynamic mayor who really is pro-development, and he's providing incentives, which he should for certain markets. There are 5-year tax incentives for certain markets close by, 10 years a little further away. But there are other cities that have developed. I mean, we were talking before. Harrison, which was not, it was a hidden space. Besides the Red Bull Stadium, there's development in Harrison. It's becoming a possibility. Are the Amboys a potential? Where can you see? And Edgewater, I think, is a great example because many years ago when I used to teach at Fairleigh Dickinson College of Dentistry, a business course, Edgewater, there was a racquetball court, okay, but there weren't housing over there. There was limitations, and what has happened in Edgewater is a great example.
But I think it's a combination of the live-work amenities, the location, measured in commutation distance. So in Jersey City, for instance, you're 15 minutes. We think ground zero is Union Square Park, it's 14th Street. So then you go into a next, let's say a half an hour commutation, that's maybe Edgewater, Ridgewood. Then you have 38, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, which might be New Brunswick and some of the Amboys and places like that. They all have opportunities, even though they dissipate the farther away you get. So the location's key. The ability of a public-private partnership, the bones of a city that then let you have this, what I call live-work.
You bring up a very interesting. If there's any example of a public-private partnership, it's what you guys have done. I mean, you're a nonprofit organization, and you work with the industry and the companies and the university, who really is New Brunswick.
Yeah, I think if you looked at most of our projects, you'll see, and it confuses most people, but you'll see the hospital being a partner. You'll see the parking authority being a partner. Maybe the university, a private developer. We've created condominium interest, deeds of apportionment, and the financing documents are monumental. But you kind of do what's necessary, and in a place like New Brunswick, where there's a long history, which like you're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, there has always been that attitude that public-private partnerships are what saved the city. Johnson & Johnson decided to stay. They were a very driving force. But, from my position, if I call the president of one of the two hospitals, the dean of the medical school, the president of the university, and the CEO of J&J, it may take the CEO of J&J 10 days to call me back, but all those other people, we called you back in, a couple hours. They meet on a regular basis. So we kind of know what they're always thinking. So as a not-for-profit developer, we're out there looking for opportunities to kind of solve their problems.
But here's a question. How does a national finance company who had learned before you would join them not to enter certain markets because they had, make a decision that there are opportunities for growth in New Jersey?
Well, I think the first thing is we have about 60% of our assets on the East Coast and 30% in New York. And as I said earlier, the affordability in a place like New Jersey can't be compared to the other locations in the metropolitan area. If you look at the vacancy rate in northern New Jersey, you're talking about 4.6% vacancy. And, it's just a compelling environment.
Now, how do you, as a community banker, see the competition? Because, as I said, there is always competition. Especially in New Jersey, there's a TD Bank on every corner. And then there's investors, and then you have the locals. I mean, basically, Capital One has made a concerted decision not to be doing things in New Jersey. As Mike Slocum said, when we started in New Jersey, we had 165 clients. We have 10 today. They've really made the determination.
And we thank them for giving us the rest of their clients.
You know what? Somebody's misfortune is someone else's opportunity.
That's right.
So who are your clients today, and what do you finance?
So we actually, our market, we find ourselves with every bank in our marketplace. It's the most hyper-competitive market that exists. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing as well as we're doing. We believe that the level of service that we provide is far superior than other institutions, and so we're able to take business from those that are not happy with the largest institutions being in that hyper-competitive marketplace.
There are a number of banks in New York, and one of them who I've done work for over the years was Signature. Signature opened up. They've grown from $50 million bank to a $19 billion bank in 13 years. And part of it is they didn't open with bricks and mortar.
That's right.
They operated, more of a one-to-one banking relationship. And now there's another bank based in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, called Customers Bank, who is doing the identical. No retail on the branch. There's no reason. And with banking today, with remote access, with taking pictures of your check, you can change. But there are people who still say, especially maybe investors or TD, I need that bricks and mortars. What's the thought of ConnectOne Bank?
I think it's bringing the banking services to the client the way they want to access those services. There are still some clients who want to walk into a bank branch. And there are those, my kids, for instance, if it wasn't coming to borrow $20 from dad, would never step foot in a bank branch. There's those who will access electronically. Small businesses, most business owners, unless they're going to a loan closing, they're not coming to the bank branch. They're using the electronic channel. But we believe in having all of those channels, sort of having a hybrid type of operation to provide for anyone to be able to access our services, no matter how they want to do it. There are examples of banks that have gone all one way or all the other. I think the answer at this moment in time lies somewhere in the center.
Are you financing we were talking in a number of my past shows about a lot of new developers, because every cycle that we have, there are new people who believe they are developers. And because the developer has to make money, they develop. How do you look at, as you said, competition is keen. How do you look at who the new clients in the real estate business?
So for us, it's pretty simple. We're always looking at those who have a track record for what they've done before and/or have the financial capability to get a project done. There are lots of developers. There aren't a whole lot that have the financial wherewithal to do what they say they're going to do. We're starting to see, believe this or not, I'm sure you're seeing it too, already terms are starting to get loosened up again, and
yes,
things that I thought we thought would never.
I still remember there was a term that somebody would guarantee or recourse, and people were saying that term has. I know it's, in your developer hat, you don't want to know that term guarantee, but the leniency, the world has changed, okay, and part of it is due to the fact that there's so much competition out there. Do you believe, now that you're going to make your first entree into the city of Newark, And there's always talk because Senator Booker was a great promotion for the state, the city of New. Do you think Newark has the great opportunities? I mean, it's because of the transportation. You're a developer over there, and then I'm going to ask a banker and a developer about the city of Newark.
Look, I think in New Brunswick, we fought perception for a very long time. And either Newark has to deal with a reality situation or perception, but they have to start with public safety. So people really have to start to believe that it's a very safe place to be. And more of the people come to PAC and come to Prudential and have a good experience, that all helps. I think Newark, there's a tipping point in Newark, and it has to be done with critical mass. There's probably 6 big residential projects that are on the drawing board right now. Ours, we started already. We closed the financing next month. People will be living there.
But you said yours is also a captive.
Correct.
Type
So
of thing.
we're going to get done first. The true question is, do the other 5 or 6 get done? If those 5 or 6 get done in the next 48 months, I think you're going to see a different perception of Newark. If only 2 of them get done, maybe neither of them make it.
Matt, do you think you could get your investment committee to approve a loan in Newark today?
No, as Chris said, I mean, it's a public safety issue. I think also a political solidness of people that are going to follow through on what they tell you they're going to do. But I do think it is inevitable that Newark turns, and it may not be this cycle, but it could be not far behind.
Frank?
We're pretty bullish. We opened.
You're in Ironbound.
Well, we opened a brick and mortar.
You know
It
what?
is Newark.
It's Newark, but you know what? It's like Brooklyn. There are parts of Brooklyn, which are Williamsburg, but there are also parts of Brooklyn called East New York. And when I bring up the subject of East New York, I have not had one person in the past 20 shows who said to me, I'm not ready for East New York yet. It's just, it's crime, it's...
Michael, I think that you got to understand the world doesn't operate in isolation. It's a relative value. So there's like, if you're a developer, you're going to bring not just your capital, but your energy, your emotional commitment, all the facets. And there's 40 or 50 different opportunities you could look at. If you think of every one, from New Brunswick to Englewood to Edgewater. And the bottom line is that it does, again, it's not in isolation, where Newark has some interesting strong points. It has bones, it has location, and it has some problems. But if you look at that versus your relative opportunities, for instance, almost in any town in Hudson County, you're not going to choose Newark today till they get real about a competitive fact set that touches on all these areas: amenities, public safety, private partnership attitude, tax incentives, bringing the whole ball of wax together. Then maybe against the relative value, it will win more developer capital. And I don't mean it just in an equity point of view, but the whole capital that makes something happen, which is attention, which is a desire to be there. It's all those other soft things.
Right, because as you say, the bones are there. The transportation bones are there. The structures, the historic structures, the town, the fact that Ray Chambers put so much time into it with the PAC and the Prudential Center and the Penn Station. But you need to have other things to make a city
Governmental
great.
infrastructure. There has to be some level of certainty that you walk in the front door of City Hall and you'll be able to finish your project. In New Brunswick, I've been doing this for 19 years. I've had one mayor, one city attorney, and one director of public of planning and economic development, and they're all professionals. And
It's not that way. 30 minutes is not a sufficient time to talk about what's happening in New Jersey, but hopefully I'll have all of you back again. And I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank Matt, Chris, Frank, and Ken, and I'll see you next week.